Okay, students, I'm going to see about doing a couple of your problems from your homework. This is 6.5B. For this week, you have two sheets this week, both on absolute value. Some things to know about absolute value. Absolute value, if you recall, form into a V. Okay, if I was to graph them, they'd be a V on the XY coordinate plane. They will have two answers as long as the numbers on the right side are positive. Since this is algebra 1, they're all positive as you see here. Nope. There's actually two that aren't, 3, 4, that some that aren't right here. Oh, well. So when I say that, that means after you get all the other numbers outside of the absolute value to the other side of the equation, then it must be positive. Okay, so for example, in this one, I have to add the 4 across first. That gives me a positive 3. And I have the absolute value by itself. On the left side, that does equal a positive value. But if it turned out to be a negative value on the right side after you get the absolute value by itself, then there's no solution. All right, so let's do a couple problems here. So we're going to have two equations for each one of these that we have to solve for. Okay, so let's take number 4, for example. Let me write this down here first, and then I'll move it over so you can see on the screen. Okay. So, let me zoom in here. Okay, so this is number 4. That's what it looks like. Like I said, since I'm working the problems out right from your homework, I suggest if you have a printer, you've already printed this out, and then you're just working this problem out with me and you have it done on your assignment right there. So since the absolute value is by itself right now, and the right side is positive, I will have two answers. The first answer, all I do is write down the exact problem, just take off the absolute value, and that's it. The second one, I take off the absolute value, and I set it equal to the opposite of what's on the right side. The opposite of 14 is negative 14. So now these are my two equations I'm going to solve. I'm going to be doing this for every problem. I first get the absolute value by itself, so if there's something else on the outside of it or behind it here, I just first move it across, get the absolute value by itself, and then I do these two steps. First one, just take it off, solve it. Second one, put it to the opposite on the right side. So in this case, negative 14. So we can solve both of them at the same time because we're going to add 6 across on both equations. So now I get x equals 14 plus 6, 20, or x equals negative 14 plus 6, negative 8. There are my two answers. Now I can guarantee I'm right because I can plug it right back into here. 20 minus 6 is 14. What's the absolute value of 14? 14. Remember, absolute value means the distance from 0, and distance is always positive. That's why this has to be a positive number over here. I'll plug in negative 8 here. Negative 8 minus 6 is negative 14. How far is negative 14 from 0? 14. So both of these are correct. You can easily check to guarantee that you have them right. Okay. Let's bring up another one here. Let's go back to the worksheet itself. Let's go, so all these are those steps. Let's go to one down here where you have to do number 12. We'll do some steps first to get the absolute value by itself. So number 12, we write that one down. Okay, I've got it written down, so now let's go ahead and bring this up. Here it is written down. So again, I don't immediately go to this. I have to first get the absolute value by itself. So I have to get rid of this 2 and this negative 1 to the other side. Remember, we solve all equations with reverse PEMDAS. So that means I'm going to add or subtract first. Remember, you got to know your reverse PEMDAS. So I'm doing my adding or subtracting first. So I'm adding the 1 across. And now I'm dividing by 2. Okay, so now I have it down to looking like number one up here, where the absolute value is by itself, and the right side is positive, so I can get my two answers. If there's negative, no answer, no solution. So now I go ahead and do these two steps up here, where I just take off the first absolute value and set it equal to itself, or I set equal to negative 13, the opposite of positive 13. Okay, and then like I said, you should just solve both of them at the same time. So again, now we're using reverse PEMDAS. What are we going to do first? Is there something to add or subtract across first? Oops, what did I write down? -5, should have been +5 there. That should have been about the same. Okay, all right. So I'm going to subtract 5 across first. Notice I'm doing it on both equations, solving both at the same time. So I get 6x equals 13 minus 5 is 8. Or I have 6x equals negative 13 minus 5 is negative 18. And the last step, opposite of multiplication, is division. Okay, now don't forget we have to reduce that. You don't leave it as 6/8. I always reduce or simplify. So 4/3, or, and negative divided by positive is negative, 18 divided by 6 is 3. There's my two answers. Box them in or circle them in. Okay, so it's easy for me to see. This is what your work should look like for every problem. Okay, I can plug these back in. 4/3, 3 cancels 6, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 5 is 13, and negative 18 plus 5 is negative 13. The absolute value of negative 13 is positive 13. Okay, so I can guarantee I am right. Now, as I told you, you could also check these in the graphing calculator. Okay, so to do that, let me bring up the graphing calculator here. So since you can test on your graphing calculator, you can guarantee all these are right also from your graphing calculator. So we got our y equals, let's clear that one out. The second one is going to be, all we're doing is one side of the equation, we put it here. Second side of the equation, we put right here. Okay. If we're going to do it from the very get-go, let me show you here on the worksheet. Okay, so if we're going back to this one right here, what we need to do is set it equal to 0. So I would need it, if I want to do it all in one equation, okay, and see both the answers. I'm going to set this equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract the 14 across, and that's now 0. Okay, and then I can see both the answers and use y equals 0 on the second line every time. See, so on the second line I already have, if I put in y equals 0, that means I have to make one side of it equal to 0. So to do that, I would subtract the 14 across. That 14 does not go inside the absolute value, just be absolute value of x minus 6, absolute value, and then minus 14. So if we go ahead and do that, remember ABS, let's put it up here again. ABS, you can get that from second catalog right away. Absolute value, it was x minus 6. Okay, go to the right to get outside of it, and then remember we subtracted that 14 across, so minus 14. And therefore the right side is equal to 0. Okay, and so now we go ahead and look at the graph. Okay, you notice we can't see the whole graph, so we want to zoom out. Okay, and just hit enter twice, and now we can see here's our two answers right here where they intersect. So how to find when I want to calculate something, second trace, which is your calc button, and I want to find where they intersect, number 5. Enter, enter, guess. There's my -8 for one answer. And then I do second calc, number 5 again. Second curve, and then the guess, this time I have to move the guess, use my right arrow and move it over close to the other answer. It's got to be more than, as long as it's more closer to this one than this one, I'll jump to it. So I can stop right here and I'll jump to this one because it's closer to it. And 20 is my second answer right there. So I could do this with every one if you wanted to. okay? I could, so if I was doing that for the second one here, so we go back up and look at the second one, number 20. 12 we did. Okay, so if I'm gonna set this equal to 0, I gotta subtract the 25 across. So it's minus 25 and a minus 1 is minus 26. So I type in 2, absolute value 6x plus 5, absolute value here, and then minus 26. And then I have equal 0. So let me go ahead and do that now. So again, the second one is saying at 0. I'm just changing this first one. So clear that. We have 2 absolute value of 6x plus 5, 6x plus 5. There's my other absolute value. And it was minus 26. When I move that 25 across, subtract it across, oops, minus 26. Okay, and then I'm going to do second calc number 5 for intersect. We see the intersect here and here. Okay, first curve enter, second curve enter, guess. First one, 1.3 repeating bar, that's 4/3. Okay, and that's what we had down, is 4/3. Okay, and now the second one, second calc number 5 intersect. First curve, second curve, and then guess. I'm going to use the left arrow key to move it closer to that one. And you get -3, which is our other answer. So there's no excuse for missing any of these as long as you plug your calculator right, and you can check them right there. Okay, we just did it with numbers 4 and 12. All right, let's do one more down here. Again, it's the same steps, no different. We'll go ahead and do this fraction one. Doesn't matter here. Okay, 19, let me write it down. Okay, so now let me minimize that, bring up the screen here. Okay, here it is right here. Number 19. Remember, the first thing we need to do is get the absolute value by itself. So I have to get rid of this -1/3. That says -1/3 times, that's the opposite is division. Dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. You know that from middle school or elementary school. So I'm multiplying by the reciprocal, which is -3. Okay, then I get absolute value of 1 minus 8x equals -6. Now I want to verify that I copied that down right. Yes, I did. Okay. So now, do you remember what our answer should be? What did I tell you? That if you, once you get your absolute value by itself here, what kind of number must you have over here on the right side in this case? Then it had to be the right side, the opposite side, wherever the absolute value is. If the whole thing was on the left side, then this would be over there. So what it has to be, this has to be a positive number, because remember, the absolute value means the distance from 0, and distance is always positive. This is why this must be positive. So since it's negative, the answer is no solution. I don't need to go any further. Now, some of you might forget that, and you're going to go ahead and solve it, and you will get 2 answers. But then if you leave those 2 answers, that means you didn't check your answers to see if they don't match. If you plugged it back in the calculator, it would not work. So let's go ahead and plug in the calculator to check right now. So bring it back up, clear this, and it was a we had -1/3, so we'll go ahead and use the fraction right there. -1/3. And then we had absolute values, so second catalog, enter. And it was 1 minus 8x, 1 minus 8x. That was inside, and then it equaled 2, so that means I have to subtract that 2 across, so I get 0 on the right side. And then I have 0 on the right side, so there's my y equals 0. So I can go ahead and hit graph. Well, look what happens. This V opens down, and the reason it opens down is because you have a negative out front here. Okay, if it's positive, it opens up. It's negative, so it opens down. 1/3 means it's a little wider. But the point is, looking back at the graph, does it cross y equals 0 or the x-axis? No, it doesn't. That's why there's no solution, because it doesn't cross. Remember, we found where it intersected the y-x-axis, which is the equation y equals 0. So I can see right from here that I should have no solutions. Okay, so that's just another way I can even check with no solutions. If I get a graph that looks like that, I already know it's no solution. Okay, let's do one more that doesn't cause me no solution on the bottom side here. So let's say 20. Okay, so 20 absolute value of 3x minus 8 plus 0.25 equals 0.75. Okay, so I bring it down. Here it is right here. Remember, the first thing is get the absolute value by itself, so subtract the 0.25 across. I have an absolute value of 3x minus 8 equals 0.5, or 1/2. Doesn't matter if you want to use 0.5 or you want to change it to a half. It's your choice. Remember the first one, first equation, all I do is take the absolute value off, so 3x minus 8 equals 1/2, or it's 3x minus 8 equals negative 1/2, just the opposite of it. So I add 8 across. In my first step, reverse PEMDAS, add or subtract first. 3x, 8.5, which is 17 halves. Put it back into a fraction here, improper fraction, and 8 minus a half is 7.5, which is 15 halves. Okay, you could also have it in a calculator. Oops, let me move this over so you can see. Okay, last step is divided by 3. Divided by 3 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/3. Okay, and that's why I did that. So 3 doesn't cancel with 17, neither does 2, so I just have 17 times 1, it's 17, over 2 times 3 is 6, or x equals, the 3 will cancel with the 15 5 times, and then I get 5 over 2. Okay, so these are my two answers right here. Now again, I could plug that in the graphing calculator. Now we're on the graph calculator, I'm going to first subtract that 0.75 across, so I get 0 over here. So 0.25 minus 0.75 is minus 1/2. Okay, so let's go back to the graphing calculator. Oops, graphing calculator. Here we go. And we had, let's delete that. Okay, I'll just clear it. Okay, so we had absolute value, so second catalog, absolute value 3x minus 8, 3x minus 8. Move it outside that, and now we subtracted the 0.75 across, so it's minus 1/2, minus 0.5. Okay, and I want to do second trace or calc in number 5. And remember, I want to find where it intersects. First curve, second curve, guess 2.5. Remember, 2.5 is 5 halves. Same thing as 2.5. If you want to zoom in, okay, there's your 2.5, and then we want this one right here. So second calc, number 5 again, first curve, second curve, and then guess, move it over to the second answer over here. And notice that's 2.83 repeating bar. Okay, now say you don't know what 2.873 repeating bar. Well, we had 17.6 down. I could go back to my screen, do 17 divided by 6. That's what I had down as my fraction. And I see that's 2.83 repeating bar. Or I could type in 2.83333 all the way to the end. Okay, and then hit math fraction, and we'll change it to 17/6 for me right there. Okay, so I can see that I got the right answer for both of them right there. All right, so that covers all the examples you need for doing any problem on this whole homework assignment. Okay, again, show your work like I just did there. Take your screenshots. So I don't care if you show me this page again, you do all your work on paper, you can just take the screenshots of your paper. You don't need to go ahead and just put your answers back here. What's important is I see the work with your answer. Okay, so unless you're gonna do all your work and your answer on this sheet, you write small enough to get two equations on each one type of thing, or across here and across here. Then you can do it here, otherwise do it on a separate sheet and just take me the screenshots of those sheets and send them back in. Okay, that will do it.